Mixing with Mike mixing tip. Mixing background vocals. This is a request that came in, and I wanted to kind of go over a couple of ideas here about how to work with background vocals, and one of the ways to get sort of like this really tight focused sound that a lot of people use in mixes today. And so just kind of give you an idea. Now, what I have is a series of different parts here that are mixed into stereo stems. Now, ideally, when you start off with background vocals, the idea would be to go through the individual parts and actually edit them pretty tightly. So, you know, in the original performances, try to make sure that they are as tight as possible, and then kind of tidy up some of the timings, the endings, clean up some of these things. This is like a way of getting everything really focused and honed in. A lot of times vocals that are they sound too loose or they don't quite have the tightness, it's just really a matter of editing and kind of moving things around. Now, you don't want to make everything perfectly exact on each one, but you want it to be close enough so there's an edge there that you kind of have to cut, or a line that you kind of have to cut. Now, when I worked with this or set the session up, I pre-mixed some of these vocals down into stereo stems. And the idea, and this is pretty common, is that the way that I mix them, so if we kind of go through parts one by one here, let's see if I can do this one by one here. Now, you notice that they're all hard left and right. So if I'll just play them all kind of here, just to kind of go through a little error message. Let's get it. So it's all female vocals, and what I want to do is kind of work in with the different parts, the actual notes that they're playing. So I want to make sure that I get good balances between the individual notes. So if there's a blend of harmonies, that I kind of get that laid out the way I want. It's very common technique actually in tracking vocals, that you may have a melody part and it will be sung full voice, it'll be sung with a very airy voice, it'll be sung with maybe with a male voice, and then you can kind of mix in those different aspects or tonal characters so that you can kind of help to shape the overall tone. But in almost every instant, in almost every record, the background vocals are spread hard left and right. It's sort of a common thing because unless you're working with a choral group where that is the focus of the song, is the whole group of vocals, then the idea is you kind of want to get them focused. You not want to move them out of the way, off to the side. And I'll show you some techniques to help kind of even widen them beyond that, which can sometimes be helpful. The other thing about moving them to the hard left and right is that in speakers in particular, not so much in headphones, actually a bit in headphones, but more so in speakers, when you move something hard left and right, it becomes very focused because it's coming from a single source, from one speaker, not from two speakers. And so there's no comb filtering going on. And so just by that nature alone, it'll start to focus. One of the other things I do is I kind of work through the parts in terms of working through some things, is I'm pretty steep in terms of working with the equalization. So if I just kind of take this part right here, so I'll be pretty aggressive sometimes with the actual equalization. And then what I'll do here also is, if a certain part is like a higher part, I'll actually roll off a bit more of the low end than on the other parts. So as I add those higher harmonies, I'll kind of cheat that roll off on the bottom up, and this will kind of help to focus it. You can also do the same thing on the top, although generally, like especially for this was sort of an R&B track, you're going to get a little bit more of the air coming up from that side. So, and then, so you could see how these are all shifted a little bit differently based on the pitch. Now, you notice that I do like opposing shelves. This is like a very common thing that is really cool. It's sort of like a bass treble control, and by grabbing or setting, let's just say, for example, just to kind of show you what this is, let's just start with this one vocal here, and I'll just kind of copy this over so I can kind of play with it. When I want to find a tonal balance of something, I can actually work like here with the REQ, I can Control Shift. It's so what I want to do is I want to find the tonal center.
I'll find you again. No make believe or lying pretense. I'll find you again.
So sometimes that's lower, sometimes that's higher. So if I go down this way, I'll get more of a mid-range tonal character, or if I can, you know, this is why I can kind of move this between different parts. So just to see here between the two, I got really close just by, you know, doing the same basic technique, and by sweeping back and forth, I can kind of find that crossover point, sort of like bass treble controls, and that helps to set like a nice air to the original vocal. So if I bypass all of the background, the EQs, let's just see what that sounds like. So you hear that kind of open character that's in there. The next thing that I do is and there are many different ways of doing it. This is one way to do it. Like one technique I like to use is like a very, very low threshold. You can see it's almost -41. Really fast attack and release, and a very, very light ratio. And what you get is this sort of consistent, what I call like a tonal balancing. It's kind of like a way of pulling the overall sound together. So because the threshold is really low, it's always going to be giving you, in this case, I always do like a consistent, almost 3 dB a gain reduction with a 3 dB boost. And what it does is it pulls the tone of them together. So just listen, check this out. This is a... So you hear the focus.
And if you say you're leaving again, I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you again.
So here, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of focusing them in. There's several ways to do this. Another really great compressor for this type of thing is the Renaissance Vox. So if there's a couple cool things about it. One has a nice soft gate that you could put in to kind of pull back if you're not editing in between all the lines, to kind of tighten that up. So anything that goes on in between words or in between phrases, if you're not editing it out phrase by phrase, I'm sort of cheating here by doing this. And then also it adds 3 different styles of compression kind of all built into one. And so this is like a cool way. So I had this with a lot of, because it adds a lot of gain. So I'm going to.
And if you say you're leaving again, I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you again.
Another like this is one of the things that this kind of employs is something, if you're familiar with the MV2 low-level compression. It's sort of like a combination low-level compressor, high, peak limiter kind of thing. And if I take this, I'm just going to kind of guess here at what this would. Let's just see if I can rough this into place. So I'm just trying to balance out the gain. So you can really hear the air that this adds in. It's still a little touch more gain there, but just so I get this as like a starting point. So this is like where this one kind of works sort of in a little bit more mid-band. This works bottom up and top down as a way to kind of like pull the focus of it in all together. So this is with it.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again. Ooh, ooh.
So we'll go with that over the Renaissance Vox, and then one of the things that I'd like to do, I always do this after compression, which is to do any kind of de-essing that would sort of be necessary.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
Maybe if I go up to the chorus
If
section.
you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again. Ooh.
So anyway, there's not a horrible S problem here, but if there is, generally this is like a good place, like you de-ess it pretty heavily and then go on the top and then add shelve up the high frequencies afterwards. So you kind of like cut down the S's and then you bring the air in, and then you get this incredible air, and then it runs right through the S's without cutting or overcutting in the vocal part. So
If you say you're leaving again,
so there's a little
if
bit,
you say you're leaving,
and that's kind of, I think with the gain there, sort of oversaturating a little bit. Let me see if I can get this a little bit.
if you say you're leaving,
All right, so maybe if I back that off a little bit and then copy that over to my other settings here, and
if you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again.
one of the ways to kind of work on to the next level is to start to bring in some effects. And there's a couple ways to do this. One is to open up like a simple doubler. Now, there's a real key trick here that a lot of people don't think about. But when you have like a part that, say, is panned left, what you really want it to do when it feeds into a doubler, you don't want it to bring back that doubled part back in the left. In fact, you want it to come back in the right-hand side. So if I send, as I'm doing here, with my sends, they're all following the main panner. So if I have a hard panned left vocal, it's going to feed into the left side of the doubler, go through the left side doubling effect. But I'm bringing back the return inverted so that it's feeding that delayed signal to the other side, and then it sounds more like a double. Whereas when it's on the same side, it'll have a tendency to sound a little bit more like a chorus or phasing effect, depending upon the delay time. And I can make just kind of show you what that is. Now, on those double parts, I'd like to add a lot of top end. It's just a simple thing here. One cool way to do it is just, a moderate amount of delay, so we're talking about, but different on each side. So it's not identical, and that's sort of important. They're pretty much in the same ballpark here with a little bit of detune. So the Waves doubler here is really cool for that. Not all the plugins have that. And if you want, you can add like a little bit of modulation. And then I'll bring that in right here.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again.
And now, if I want to make this tighter, I can tighten up the delay.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again.
So that gives it like a tighter kind of chorusing effect, which actually I kind of like for this. Maybe I'll kind of work with this a little bit.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again.
And that helps to open up the sound. Now, if I put it in its normal stereo, you'll hear it. It'll look a little bit different. So the left side signals are feeding the left side.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again.
And if I go across,
no make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again.
So in a way, I kind of like this a little bit better, where it's sort of spread wide like this with a tighter delay. It acts a little bit more like a phasing or chorusing effect. So I'll kind of leave it there. And even though it's not really modulating, that's sort of what the pitch does right in there, you know, kind of creates a little bit of that phasing effect. Another way to create this effect, which a lot of people do, is they do like an auto-tune type of thing. This is just like a simple auto-tune effects kind of thing.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again.
So here, what this does by sort of, you know, tightening up the pitch, making it really tight, we can really just kind of focus the sound. I can get like, you know, that's fast. I could go right into...
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe.
Or actually, I would have to do it on all of them. So let's just see. I was going to say I should hear that a little bit more on these guys, but this would be another way to sort of dial something in that has like is a little bit more affected. So depending upon the production and the track, this may make sense.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again.
So here, you know, so now we've got that like a little bit tighter. We can also put in a reverb. Now there's lots of ways to do like a reverb. Sometimes like doing just like a really short room and mixing it in really tight kind of does that. So I have this like a really small space here on the H reverb. I also have it compressing on the reverb, which really tightens up the sound, rolled off a little bit on the bottom, and kind of pushing a little bit more on the high frequencies. Really short reverb time, right? So this is 0.37 seconds, right?
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again. Ooh.
And then I can sink in a little bit of pre-delay if I want, or none. So this will make it really, really tight.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again.
And if you really want to kind of spread this wide, like, you know, kind of like can make this kind of go on forever here. I did this as a multi-mono plugin, so you could do with 2 mono reverbs and duplicate them so that they look very close to the same, and then just sort of decorrelate them a little bit. So change a little bit of some of the settings here on each of them. So this is just making some minor adjustments to some of the settings, maybe making the reverb time a touch longer on one side, touch lighter on the other. You know, just changing some like quick, simple kind of things, like a couple milliseconds here, maybe on the pre-delay, etc. And by doing this, what I can do is I can get, you know, a little bit.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No.
So now I've created like a slightly varied space between each side, and that helps to create even more separation.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again.
And if I pull it a little bit more towards the early reflections balance here, this can actually make it even tighter.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again.
And then from here, one way to kind of pull this all together in the track would be to put, you know, like a nice limiter on here that might bring out some of the you know, like just kind of pull it all together and balance it. So something like a Fairchild would be really good, or an LA2A would also be very good. This would kind of be like one that you could work
with. If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again.
Right, so now we have like we have this all built in, and if I really want to have some fun with this, I can also spread it even wider and go with like an imager effect here. So if I want to like just take it and just put it just outright outside of the speakers, then I can do something.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again. Ooh, ooh.
Oddly enough, it kind of works in reverse, and maybe because of some of the other effects that we have here, this is not working. Sometimes this is like a way of just like creating a little bit more spread on the vocal. So all of this is sort of feeding into here. And if I feel like I want to mix this up a little bit, in the blend of the rest of the mix, I could also put an EQ on this. The compressor here, or the limiter here, is really important. What I like about this is that with the LA2A, it's very smooth. The optical is like really open sounding, plus you get a little bit of air and warmth from the tubes and transformers that are part of an LA2A. So this is actually a pretty good one. And you just kind of hear this on the track.
If you say you're leaving again, I'll find you. I'll find you again. No make-believe or lying pretense. I'll find you. I'll find you again. Baby, we're far from the end. You say you're leaving. Know how to follow it. I'll find you.
And then you get like the real presence of it. You get like the nice spread on it, and it kind of sits, has its really own place in the mix. So like in this type of like R&B track, like the background vocals is such a classic part of that's basically the hook, and usually the melody or the lead is doing some kind of ad libs or something. But anyway, here's some ideas that might help you to kind of work with background vocals and kind of spread them. There's so many different things you can do when you start digging into it. You can really have a lot of fun, and maybe I exaggerate some of the effects here, over airing them or whatever, but it's it's not that uncommon, and like filtering them down is really important. Kind of getting them really, really focused and kind of tonally exactly where you want them. I could pull back on some of the air if I wanted to kind of tighten that top and make them even a little bit more, kind of focused in. But that's like a good starting place. All right, there you have it. So mixing with Mike mixing tip, mixing background vocals.